The first thing Kira felt was pain. It moved through her body like fire, starting from her head and reaching down to her legs. She opened her eyes slowly, and the world was dark and broken around her. She was inside her ship, or what was left of it. The research vessel had been her home for 6 months. Now it was torn apart, metal bent and twisted like paper. Smoke filled the air, and somewhere behind her, she could hear the soft crackle of flames eating through wires. Kira tried to move. Her left arm screamed in protest, but she forced herself to sit up. Blue blood ran down the side of her face, and she wiped it away with a shaking hand. Her skin was pale lavender, like all Varani, and in the dim emergency lighting, she looked almost gray. "Talon?" she called out. Her voice was weak, barely a whisper. "Marek, anyone?" No answer came. She crawled through the wreckage, pulling herself over broken consoles and shattered glass. The main cabin was destroyed. She found Talon first, her pilot, his body crushed beneath a fallen support beam. His eyes were open but empty. Marek, her assistant, had been thrown through the viewport. She did not look at what remained of him. Kira sat in the ruins of her ship and allowed herself 30 seconds to grieve. That was all she could afford. The sun was setting outside, painting the alien sky in shades of red and orange. And she knew what night meant on this world. Moras to 7, the quarantine planet. The Forbidden World. Her research team had been studying the planet from orbit, never meant to land. But something had gone wrong with the engines. A malfunction, an explosion, and then the long, terrible fall through the atmosphere. Now she was alone on a world that the Volrini Confederacy had marked with their highest warning level. A world where everything wanted to kill you, especially at night. She had to move. Kira pulled herself out of the wreckage and stood on shaking legs. The jungle around her was thick and dark green, filled with plants she did not recognize. Strange sounds filled the air, clicks and whistles, and something that might have been screaming in the distance. Her emergency pack was still attached to her belt. Inside, she found a small light, a medical kit, and a communication device. She tried the device first, hoping for a miracle. The screen flickered and died. The beacon was damaged. No signal would reach orbit. She was truly alone. Kira picked a direction and started walking. Her training told her to find high ground, to get above the tree line where she could see the land around her. Maybe she could find shelter. Maybe she could repair the beacon. Maybe she could survive long enough for someone to notice her ship had gone down. The jungle grew darker as she walked. The red sun disappeared below the horizon, and 2 small moons rose to take its place. Their light was weak, barely enough to see by, and Kira turned on her small light to guide her way. That was her first mistake. She did not hear them at first. The Rippers moved in silence, their 6 legs carrying them through the undergrowth without a sound. They hunted by heat and vibration, and her light was like a beacon calling them home. Kira sensed them before she saw them. A feeling on the back of her neck, the ancient instinct that told all prey when a predator was near. She stopped walking and turned slowly. 3 of them stood in the darkness behind her. They were the size of large dogs, but wrong in every way. Their bodies were covered in black scales that seemed to drink the light. 6 legs ended in claws that could tear through metal. Their heads were flat and wide, filled with rows of teeth that never stopped growing. Rippers, the apex predators of Mora 7. The reason this world was forbidden. Kira had studied them from orbit. She had watched recordings of what they did to their prey. A pack of Rippers could strip a creature to bone in less than a minute. Their teeth were designed to cut, to tear, to rip apart anything made of flesh. She had no weapon, no way to fight, no way to run fast enough. The Rippers spread out, surrounding her with practiced ease. They had done this 1,000 times before. They clicked to each other, communicating in sounds that hurt her ears, and she knew they were deciding how to kill her. Kira closed her eyes. She thought of her home, of the purple skies of Velrun Prime, of her mother who had begged her not to take this mission. She had wanted to explore the stars. Now she would die alone on a world no one would ever find. Then something crashed through the jungle. The sound was massive, like a ship falling from the sky. Trees bent and broke, and the ground shook beneath her feet. The Rippers turned, confused, their simple minds trying to understand what was happening. A shape burst from the undergrowth dot. It was tall, taller than her, with brown skin and dark hair and eyes that burned with something she did not recognize. It wore torn clothing and carried a metal pipe in one hand, swinging it like a weapon. A human. Kira had read about humans in classified files. A primitive species from a death world called Earth, recently discovered by the Confederacy. Dangerous, the file said. Unpredictable, not yet classified for contact. The human did not hesitate. It ran straight at the nearest Ripper and brought the pipe down on its skull with a crack that echoed through the jungle. The creature fell, twitching, and the human was already moving to the next one. The Rippers were confused. They did not understand. Nothing fought back on this world. Everything ran, everything hid, everything died. But this creature attacked them with a fury that made no sense. The second Ripper lunged, and the human met it with a kick that sent it tumbling backward. The third tried to circle around, to attack from behind, but the human was already turning, the pipe swinging in a wide arc. The Rippers retreated. Not far, just enough to regroup. They clicked to each other again, and Kira could see them watching, learning, trying to understand this new threat. The human turned to her. Its face was covered in sweat and dirt and old scars, and it breathed heavily like it had been running for hours. But its eyes were clear and focused. It grabbed her arm with one strong hand. "Run," it said. "Now?" And Kira ran. The human ran through the jungle like he knew every tree, every rock, every shadow. Kira struggled to keep up, her injured leg burning with each step, but he never slowed down enough to lose her. When she stumbled, his hand was there to catch her. When she fell, he pulled her back to her feet. Behind them, the Rippers followed. She could hear their clicking in the darkness, tracking them through the trees. But they kept their distance now, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment never came. The human led her to a cliff face covered in vines. He pushed the vines aside to reveal a cave entrance, dark and narrow and almost invisible in the moonlight. He shoved her inside and followed close behind, pulling a heavy metal plate across the opening. Kira collapsed on the cave floor, her chest heaving. Her whole body hurt. Her leg was bleeding again, and she could feel her strength fading with every heartbeat. The human did not rest. He moved through the cave with purpose, lighting small fires in metal containers along the walls. The cave came alive with flickering orange light, and Kira saw that it was more than just a hole in the rock. It was a home. Weapons hung from the walls, cool things made from metal and bone. Supplies were stacked in corners, salvaged from what must have been a crashed ship. Water dripped from the ceiling into containers made from animal skulls. Dried meat hung from hooks, and strange fruits were piled in baskets. Someone had been living here for a very long time. The human knelt beside her and examined her leg without asking permission. His hands were rough but gentle, and he cleaned the wound with water from a leather pouch. "You're Velrani," he said. It was not a question. Kira nodded, too tired to speak. "Thought so. Read about your people in my ship's database before it died." He wrapped her leg with cloth that looked like it had been torn from his own clothing. "I'm Marcus. Marcus Cole. Welcome to hell." Over the next few days, Kira learned what survival on Mora 7 truly meant. Marcus had crashed on this world 18 months ago. His ship had been a smuggling vessel, carrying goods between systems that did not want to be connected. A navigation error had brought him too close to the planet, and something in the atmosphere had killed his engines. He should have died in the first week. Every other species would have. The Rippers hunted everything that moved, and the planet was filled with 100 other dangers. Poisonous plants, venomous insects, predators that burrowed beneath the ground and waited for prey to walk above them. But Marcus was human. And humans, Kira discovered, were not like anything else in the galaxy. She watched him eat things that would have killed her instantly. Berries that her scanner marked as toxic, meat from creatures that bled acid, water from streams filled with parasites. His body processed it all without complaint. When she asked how this was possible, he just shrugged. Humans evolved on a death world too, he said. Earth isn't as bad as this place, but it taught us to adapt. Our bodies can handle almost anything if we give them time. She watched him sleep, and that was strange too. Valrani needed 10 hours of deep rest each day, or their minds would begin to fail. Marcus slept in short bursts, 2 or 3 hours at a time, and he woke instantly at the smallest sound. His body was never fully at rest, always ready to fight or run, but the thing that amazed her most was his wounds. On the 3rd day, she watched him change the bandage on his arm. A Ripper had caught him during her rescue, its claws digging deep into his flesh. The wound should have taken weeks to heal, maybe months. In a Valrani, it might have required medical intervention to prevent infection. Marcus's wound was already closing. New pink skin was growing over the cut, and the infection that should have killed him was being fought off by his own blood. How? She asked, unable to hide her shock. Marcus looked at his arm like it was nothing special. Humans heal fast. Always have. Our ancestors needed to keep moving even when they were hurt. If you stopped, you died. So we evolved to recover quickly. Kira began to understand why the Confederacy had classified humans as dangerous at night. The Rippers came to test Marcus's defenses. They scratched at the metal plate covering the cave entrance. They clicked and screamed in the darkness, trying to find a way inside. Sometimes one would try to dig through the rock itself, and Marcus would be there with a spear, waiting. He never seemed afraid. He met each attack with fire and noise and violence, driving the creatures back again and again. When dawn came, he would count the bodies outside the cave and drag them away before they attracted bigger predators. On the 5th night, Kira asked the question that had been burning in her mind. How do you keep going? How do you not give up? Marcus was sharpening a blade made from Ripper bone. He did not look up from his work. Giving up isn't really in our programming, he said. Humans have this thing, this stubbornness that doesn't make sense. When everything tells us to stop, to lie down, to accept death, something inside us refuses. We keep moving even when there's no hope. We fight even when we can't win. He tested the blade's edge with his thumb. I don't know why we're like this. Maybe it's stupid, but it's kept me alive for 18 months, so I'm not going to question it. Kira thought about the files she had read. The Confederacy did not understand humans. They saw them as primitive, as simple creatures who had barely reached the stars. But sitting in this cave, watching this impossible man prepare for another night of battle, she knew the files were wrong. Humans were not primitive. They were something else entirely. They were survivors. And in a galaxy full of dangers that made them the most terrifying species of all. I want to learn, she said quietly. Teach me how to survive like you do. Marcus finally looked up at her. His eyes were tired but kind, and for the first time since she had crashed on this world, Kira saw him smile. All right, he said, but I warn you, it's not pretty. Human survival is ugly and brutal, and sometimes you have to do things that haunt you forever. He handed her a small knife, simple but sharp. Still want to learn? Kira took the knife. Yes, she said. I do. Kira worked on the transmitter for 12 days. Her hands were cut and bruised from handling broken wires and sharp metal, but she did not stop. Marcus brought her parts from his own crashed ship, pieces of technology he had saved but never known how to use. Together, they built something new from the ruins of 2 dead vessels. On the 13th day, the transmitter came alive. The screen flickered with static, then cleared to show a simple message: signal broadcasting. Kira felt tears run down her face, warm and wet against her lavender skin. After weeks of fear and pain and endless night battles, there was finally hope. How long until someone hears it? Marcus asked. He stood at the cave entrance, watching the jungle with eyes that never stopped moving. I don't know, Kira admitted. Maybe days. Maybe weeks. The signal is weak, and we're far from any patrol routes. But if something... Marcus nodded. He did not smile, did not celebrate. He had been on this world too long to believe in easy victories. That night, the Rippers did not come dot at first. Kira thought it was a blessing. A quiet night, a chance to rest without the sound of claws on metal. But Marcus knew better. He stood at the cave entrance for hours, staring into the darkness with growing concern. Something's wrong, he said. They always come. Every night, without fail. If they're not here, it means they're somewhere else. Gathering. Gathering for what? Marcus did not answer, but his face told her everything she needed to know. The next morning, they saw it. The ground outside the cave was covered in tracks. Not the tracks of 3 or 4 Rippers, but hundreds. They circled the cliff face in great spiraling patterns, and all of them led in the same direction, toward the deep caves to the north. Marcus went to investigate, while Kira stayed with the transmitter. He was gone for 3 hours, and when he returned, his face was pale beneath the dirt and scars. There's a queen, he said. I've seen her. She's the size of a transport ship, and she's got a swarm around her that I couldn't count. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They're moving this way. Kira felt her blood go cold. Why? What do they want? The signal. Marcus pointed at the transmitter. It's calling them. The sound, the energy. Something about it is drawing them here. I think the Queen wants to destroy it. Or maybe she just wants to destroy us. He looked at her with eyes that held no fear, only calculation. They'll be here by nightfall. Kira reached for the transmitter. I'll turn it off. Maybe if we stop the signal. No. Marcus grabbed her hand. The signal is your only chance. If you turn it off now, no one will ever find you. You'll die on this world, just like everyone else. Then what do we do? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He walked to the wall where his weapons hung and began selecting them one by one. A spear made from ripper bone. A blade forged from ship metal. Small devices that Kira recognized as noisemakers and flares. I'm going to draw them off, he said. Lead them away from the cave. Give you time to wait for rescue. That's suicide. Maybe. He strapped the weapons to his body, moving with the calm efficiency of someone who had made peace with death long ago. But it's also the only plan that might work. The Queen will follow me if I make enough noise. Her swarm will follow her. And you'll be safe. Kira stepped in front of him, blocking his path. I won't let you do this. We can find another way. We can fight together or run together or... Kira. His voice was gentle but firm. I've been living on borrowed time since I crashed here. Every day I wake up, I'm surprised to still be breathing. But you have a life waiting for you. A home, a family, a future. I'm not going to let some alien bugs take that away from you. He put a hand on her shoulder, and she saw something in his eyes that she had not seen before. Kindness. Real. Honest kindness from a man who had spent 18 months fighting for every breath. Run for the southern cliffs when the fighting starts, he said. "There's a cave system there, smaller but safe. Wait for your rescue. And when you get home, tell them about this place. Tell them about the Rippers, about the Queen, about everything. Make sure no one else has to die here." Before she could argue, he was gone. Kira watched from the cliff top as the swarm arrived at sunset. They came like a black wave, flowing through the jungle and covering everything in their path. The sound of their clicking filled the air, thousands of voices speaking in a language of death. At the center of the swarm, the Queen moved with terrible grace, her massive body pushing through trees like they were grass. And there, at the edge of the clearing, stood Marcus. He lit the first flare and threw it into the swarm. The Rippers screamed as the bright light burned their sensitive eyes. The noisemakers followed, filling the jungle with sounds that drove the creatures mad. And then Marcus was running, not away from the swarm but toward it, his blade catching the fading sunlight. The first Ripper died before it knew what was happening. The second fell a moment later. Marcus moved through the creatures like a storm, cutting and stabbing and kicking anything that came close. Blue blood sprayed the ground, and the clicking turned to screams of pain and rage. The swarm turned to follow him. Just as he had planned, Kira ran for the southern cliffs, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, she could hear the battle raging, the sounds of metal on scale, of a human voice roaring defiance against an army of monsters. She reached the caves as darkness fell. The sounds of fighting grew distant, then stopped entirely. Silence filled the jungle, heavy and terrible. Kira waited through the night, unable to sleep. She thought of Marcus, of his smile, of the way he had refused to let her give up. She thought of his kindness in a world that had none, his hope in a place that should have crushed all hope. At dawn, she went to find him. She followed the trail of destruction through the jungle. Dead Rippers littered the ground, 19 of them by her count, each one killed by human hands. The trail led to a ravine, deep and filled with shadows. Marcus lay at the bottom. His body was broken. His clothing was torn and soaked with blood, both blue and red. His weapons were gone, lost somewhere in the battle. But his chest still rose and fell, slowly, painfully. He was alive. Kira climbed down into the ravine and knelt beside him. His eyes opened, just barely, and he looked up at her with something that might have been surprise. "You were supposed to run," he whispered. "I did run," she said. "And now I came back. That's what friends do." Marcus tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough that sprayed blood across his lips. "Friends. I like that." Kira took his hand in hers. It was cold and weak, so different from the strong grip that had pulled her through the jungle. "Help is coming," she said. "I know it is. You just have to hold on." Marcus closed his eyes. "I'll try," he said. Humans are stubborn like that. And in the ravine, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies, the impossible human continued to breathe. Marcus healed faster than Kira thought possible. In the days after the battle, she watched his wounds close like time was moving backward. Cuts that should have needed stitches sealed themselves with new pink skin. Bruises that covered half his body faded from purple to yellow to nothing. Broken ribs mended while he slept. It was not magic. It was not medicine. It was simply what humans were. Kira kept him fed and watered, venturing out of the ravine only when necessary. The swarm had scattered after the battle, confused without the Queen's presence to guide them. The great monster had retreated to her deep caves, wounded by something Marcus had done during the fight. For now, they were safe. On the 4th day, Marcus was able to walk. On the 5th, he could fight again. "You should be dead," Kira told him as she watched him test his grip on a new blade. "Any other species would be dead. The blood loss alone should have killed you." Marcus shrugged. It was his answer to most things. Humans don't die easy. Never have. Our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, famines, wars. We evolved to take punishment and keep going. He swung the blade in a slow arc, testing his muscles. Besides, I promised I'd try to hold on. Breaking promises isn't in my programming either. They returned to the cave on the 6th day. The transmitter was still working, still sending its signal into the void. Kira checked the equipment and felt her heart jump. "Someone answered," she said. "A Confederacy patrol. They're in the system." Marcus stood at the cave entrance, watching the jungle. His eyes were sharp again, all trace of weakness gone. "How long until they can extract you?" "They're analyzing the situation now. The planet is quarantined, so they need special authorization to land." Kira worked the communicator, trying to establish a voice connection. It might take time. The communicator crackled to life, and a voice filled the cave. It was cold and official, the voice of someone who had never felt fear. "Research Vessel Kira 7. This is Commander Veth of the Confederacy patrol ship Enlightened. We have received your distress signal. Please confirm your status." Kira grabbed the communicator. "Commander, this is Kira Vethani, xenobiologist. My ship crashed on Moros 7 16 days ago. My crew is dead. I am the only survivor." There was a long pause. When the commander spoke again, his voice was even colder. "Moros 7 is under quarantine level 5. Landing on the surface is forbidden by Confederacy law. We will note your position and request a recovery team from Central Command. Estimated arrival time is 43 days. Kira felt the words like a punch to the stomach. 43 days? "Commander, I won't survive 43 days. The planet is infested with predators. I need extraction now. I understand your situation, but I cannot risk my crew for a single survivor. The quarantine exists for a reason. I'm sorry." Marcus had been listening from the cave entrance. Now he walked toward Kira, his hand extended. "Give me that," he said. Kira hesitated, then handed him the communicator. Marcus looked at the device for a moment, as if deciding what to say. Then he spoke. "Commander Veth, my name is Marcus Cole. I'm human." Another long pause. When the commander responded, his voice had changed. There was something new in it, something that might have been uncertainty. "Human? We have no records of humans in this sector. I crashed here 18 months ago. I've been surviving on the surface ever since." Marcus's voice was calm, almost conversational. "I've killed a lot of rippers in that time. Learned how they hunt, how they think, how they die. I've also learned a lot about your Confederacy, about how you handle problems you don't want to deal with." "Mr. Cole, I don't see how this is relevant to." "It's relevant because I'm giving you a choice." Marcus's voice hardened. "You can send a shuttle to extract Kira Vethani right now, today, within the hour. Or you can leave her here to die, and I will make it my personal mission to survive long enough to find your patrol route. And when I do, I will board your ship. And we will have a very personal conversation about command decisions." Silence filled the communicator. Kira could hear her own heartbeat, loud and fast. When the commander spoke again, his voice was different. Smaller somehow. "I have read the files on your species, Mr. Cole. I know what humans are capable of." "Then you know I'm not bluffing." More silence. Then a sigh that crackled through the speaker. "A shuttle will be dispatched within the hour. But I want to be clear. This is highly irregular. I will be filing a report with Central Command. File whatever you want. Just get her off this rock." The communicator went dead. Kira stared at Marcus with wide eyes. "You threatened the Confederacy commander. I gave him information and let him make his own choice." Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. Humans are good at that kind of negotiation. "We call it diplomacy." The shuttle appeared an hour later, a sleek silver shape descending through the red sky. Kira watched it from the cliff top, her heart filled with emotions she could not name: hope, relief, fear, and something else. Something that felt like grief. "You should come with me," she said to Marcus. "There's nothing for you here. The Confederacy could give you a new life, a new ship. You don't have to stay on this world." Marcus shook his head. "The Confederacy doesn't want humans walking around their space. We're too unpredictable, too dangerous. They'll study me, classify me, lock me away somewhere." He looked at the jungle around them, at the world that had been his prison and his home. "At least here I'm free. That's not freedom. That's survival. For humans, sometimes they're the same thing." The shuttle landed in the clearing below. Kira could see the pilot through the window, a Volrani in a clean uniform who looked terrified to be on the surface. The engines stayed hot, ready to lift off at a moment's notice. Kira turned to Marcus. There was so much she wanted to say, so many words crowding her mind. But before she could speak, the jungle exploded. Rippers poured from the tree line. Not a handful, not a dozen, but hundreds. The queen had returned, her massive form rising above the swarm like a nightmare made flesh. She had been waiting, watching, learning. And now she had chosen her moment. The shuttle pilot screamed something over the radio. The engines roared as the ship tried to lift off. But the Rippers were already swarming over it, their claws tearing at the hull. Marcus grabbed his blade. "Get to the shuttle," he said. "I'll hold them off. There are too many." "You can't, Kira." He looked at her, and his eyes were calm. "Peaceful, even. I've been living on borrowed time for 18 months. Let me spend it on something that matters." He ran toward the swarm. Kira ran toward the shuttle. Behind her, she heard the sounds of battle begin. The shuttle rocked as Kira climbed aboard. The pilot, a young Volrani with fear in his eyes, was screaming into his communicator for permission to lift off. Rippers swarmed the hull, their claws leaving deep scratches in the metal. "We have to go," the pilot shouted. "The hull won't hold." Kira looked through the viewport. The clearing had become a battlefield. Marcus stood at the center of the swarm, his blade flashing in the fading light. Bodies fell around him, blue blood spraying the ground, but more kept coming. Always more. And behind the swarm, the queen waited. Her massive body filled the tree line, her 1,000 eyes watching the human who had dared to challenge her. She clicked the commands to her children, directing them like a general directing an army. Marcus was going to die. Kira knew it with terrible certainty. No one could fight that many creatures and survive. Not even a human, but he wasn't trying to survive. He was trying to buy time. "Wait," Kira said. "Just wait. We can't wait. The engines need 30 seconds to reach full power, and if those things break through the hole, then give him 30 seconds. Through the viewport, Kira watched Marcus fight. He moved like nothing she had ever seen, a blur of violence and determination. Each swing of his blade killed a Ripper. Each step carried him toward the cave where he had lived for 18 months. He was heading for something. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he fought toward a specific point. He had a plan: the cave, the supplies, the fuel cells he had salvaged from his crash ship. Understanding hit Kira like a physical blow. Marcus reached the cave entrance. He grabbed something from inside, something that glowed with soft blue light. Then he turned to face the swarm one final time. The queen saw him. She screamed, a sound that shook the ground and made the Rippers freeze in their tracks. Then she charged, her massive body crashing through her own children to reach the human who had caused her so much pain. Marcus stood his ground. He waited until the queen was almost upon him, until her jaws were opening to tear him apart. Then he lifted the fuel cell above his head and drove it into the ground at his feet. The explosion was blinding. Fire erupted from the cave mouth. a wall of flame that consumed everything in its path. The queen screamed again, but this time it was a scream of pain. Her scales blackened and burned, and she thrashed wildly as the fire ate through her flesh. The swarm scattered. Without their queen's commands, the Rippers lost all coordination. They ran in every direction, bumping into each other, falling over themselves in their panic. Some ran into the fire and died. Others fled into the jungle, never to return. The shuttle's engines reached full power. Now. The pilot shouted. "We go now." "No." Kira grabbed his arm. "We have to find him." There's no way anyone survived that. But Kira was already climbing out of the shuttle. The heat from the fire was intense, burning her skin even from a distance. She ran toward the blast crater, ignoring the pain, ignoring the danger. She found Marcus at the bottom of the crater. His body was broken and burned. His clothing had been destroyed by the flames, and his skin was covered in blisters that wept clear fluid. He lay in a pool of blood, both blue and red, surrounded by the charred remains of the queen. He should have been dead. Any other species would have been dead, but his chest was moving. Slowly, painfully, but moving. Kira screamed for the pilot. Together, they dragged Marcus to the shuttle and laid him on the floor. The pilot lifted off immediately, the ship climbing into the red sky while the jungle burned below them. Kira held Marcus's hand as they flew. His grip was weak, barely there, but she could feel his pulse against her fingers. Still beating, still fighting. "You stupid, stubborn human," she whispered. "You were supposed to die." Marcus's eyes opened, just barely. His lips moved, forming words she could barely hear. "Told you," he said. "Not in our programming." Then he closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. 3 months later, Kira stood before the Varani Confederacy's Scientific Council. The chamber was vast and filled with the most important minds in the galaxy. They had gathered to hear her report on Moros 7, on the Rippers, on everything she had learned. But Kira did not talk about the Rippers. She talked about humans. She showed them her recordings, her notes, her medical scans of Marcus as he healed from wounds that should have killed him. She told them about his stubbornness, his refusal to give up, his willingness to sacrifice everything for a stranger. When she finished, the chamber was silent. "Your recommendation?" The council leader asked. Kira took a deep breath. "Recategorize humanity from primitive spacefaring to priority diplomatic contact. They are not like us. They are not like any species we have encountered. They evolved on a death world, and they carry that evolution in their blood. They are survivors, warriors, and protectors." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And they will make far better allies than enemies." The council murmured among themselves. One of the members leaned forward, his old eyes sharp and curious. "You seem very certain of this assessment. What changed your mind about humanity?" Kira thought of Marcus, of his smile in the darkness, his hand pulling her through the jungle, his voice telling her to run. She thought of fire and blood, and a man who had chosen to burn for a stranger. "I watched one of them die for me," she said quietly. "Not because he had to, not because anyone ordered him to, but because he believed that one life was worth spending on another." She looked at the council, at all those brilliant minds who had never felt true danger. That is not primitive. That is something we should want as allies, before someone else makes them enemies. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was reclassified that same day. In a hospital on the far side of the galaxy, Marcus Cole woke up. He was surrounded by white walls and soft lights and the gentle hum of medical equipment. His body was wrapped in bandages, but the pain was distant, muted by drugs he did not recognize. A nurse entered the room. She was Vohani, with lavender skin and kind eyes. "How do you feel?" she asked. Marcus tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The nurse brought him water, and he drank slowly, savoring each drop. "Where am I?" he managed. "Valoran Prime. You've been in medical care for 3 months." The nurse smiled. "You're something of a celebrity now. The human who fought a queen." Marcus closed his eyes. He thought of the jungle, of the darkness, of the endless nights filled with clicking and screaming. He thought of Kira, of her smile when the transmitter came alive, of her hand holding his in the ravine. "Is she okay?" he asked. "Kira, is she okay?" "She's more than okay. She spoke before the Scientific Council. Because of her, your species has been granted diplomatic status. You're not alone anymore." Marcus felt something he had not felt in 18 months. Something warm and soft and entirely unfamiliar. Hope. He opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling above him. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, Earth was waiting. His home. His people. And for the first time since he had crashed on that terrible world, Marcus Cole allowed himself to smile. "Not in our programming," he whispered. "Never has been." The nurse looked at him curiously. "What?" "Nothing." Marcus closed his eyes and let himself rest. "Just something a friend taught me." Outside the hospital window, the stars burned bright. And among them, humanity waited, unaware that their place in the galaxy had just changed forever. All because one man had refused to let a stranger die alone.